get-go.
Just want to start today with a trigger warning disclaimer. This podcast contains descriptions of death and drowning. Hi, I'm Katie Carpenter.
I'm Terry Kovanitz.
We apologize for any and all mistakes today as we begin this episode of Titanic Transcripts.
Mr. Marconi, do you know the naval vessel Florida?
Yes, I've heard of her.
Is she equipped with wireless apparatus?
Yes, sir. I think so. I think they all are.
I'm going to read you the following and ask whether you know anything about any fact or circumstance connected with it. This is from the commanding officer of the Florida to the Secretary of the Navy, dated April 22nd, and reads as follows. On the evening of the steamship Carpathia's arrival in New York, the four following radiograms were intercepted by the Chief Operator, J.R. Simpson, Chief Electrician, United States Navy. They appear to me to be significant enough to be brought to the attention of the Department. Seagate to Carpathia, 8:12 p.m. Say, old man, Marconi Company, taking good care of you? Keep your mouth shut and hold your story. It is fixed for you, so you will get big money. Now please do your best to clear. Now that was 8:12 p.m. And then follows this one to Marconi Officer, Carpathia, and Titanic, 8:30 p.m. Arranged for your exclusive story for dollars in 4 figures. Mr. Marconi agreeing. Say nothing until you see me. Where are you now? J.M. Samus. 9 p.m. From Seagate to Carpathia Operator. Go to Strand Hotel, 502 West 14th Street to meet Mr. Marconi. 9:33 p.m. From Seagate to Carpathia. A personnel to operate Carpathia. Meet Mr. Marconi and Samus at Strand Hotel, 502 West 14th Street. Keep your mouth shut. Mr. Marconi. Now, what can you say about that, Mr. Marconi?
I do not know anything whatever about any of those messages. They're not in the phraseology which I would have approved if I had passed them. I should, however, say that I told Mr. Samus, or Mr. Bottomley, I do not remember which, that I, as an officer of the British Company, would not prohibit or prevent these operators from making anything which they reasonably could make out of selling their story of the wreck. I was anxious that, if possible, they might make some small amount of money out of the information they had.
Is that a custom of your company?
It's not a custom. It's a thing that is done.
And it's a habit?
No, it's not a habit. It is done on very special occasions. I think it was done on the occasion of a former wreck.
Where?
The Republic. I think the Binns was allowed to make a statement to the press.
For money?
For money.
Binns was the operator who stuck to his post?
Yes.
And who has been so highly commended throughout the world?
Yes.
And you say he was permitted to sell his story?
Yes, if my recollection is correct, he was.
Mr. Marconi, do you wish the committee to understand that you approve that method?
I was in favor of it, or at least I approved of or consented to his getting something out of his story.
I know, but let me ask you this. With the right to extract compensation for an exclusive story detailing the horrors of the greatest sea disaster that ever occurred in the history of the world, do you mean that an operator under your company's direction shall have the right to prevent the public from knowing of that calamity?
No.
Hold on a moment. From knowing of that calamity except through the exclusive appropriation of the facts by the operator who is cognizant of them?
I say not at all. I gave no instructions in regard to withholding any information, and I gave no advice or instructions in regard to any exclusive story to anybody. The only thing I did say or did authorize was that if he was offered payment for a story of the disaster, he was permitted, so far as the English company went, to take that money.
Mr. Marconi, if that is the case, you say you were an officer of the British company?
Yes, and for that reason I was consulted about it.
If his mouth were to be closed, if the mouth of this operator were to be closed so that the details of the catastrophe could not be printed, would not the English government and the British people be deprived of the knowledge which was in the exclusive possession of this operator?
Within every deference, I do not quite understand your question or what you are referring to.
Oh, I have not disclosed my whole purpose, and I'm not going to. I am just seeking to get what you know about it.
Yes, but with every deference, I believe you are assuming, I may understand you wrongly, that I wished or instructed this man to withhold information.
Did you know of the attempt of the President of the United States to communicate with Carpathia through the Chester?
Will you allow me to finish my answer?
Certainly.
I say emphatically that is not a fact.
What is not a fact?
That I tried to withhold any information.
I have not said that you tried to withhold it. I hope you will not draw any such inference. I am just asking you if you did it.
My answer is no.
Do you know of the attempt of the President of the United States to get into communication with the wireless operator of the Carpathia through the government station on the Chester?
I heard of that through the papers, and when I got on board the Carpathia that night, I asked if the surviving operator...
Bride?
Yes, Bride. I asked what he knew about it. He stated, and of course, I understand he'll be called to give any further information on the matter. He stated that the Chester had asked him for a repetition of the list of the passengers' names.
At what time?
Of the survivors' names.
I understand, but what time was the request made?
I do not know.
All right.
I did not go into that detail. Excuse me.
Very well. Go on.
And that he told the Chester that this list had already been sent and acknowledged by a shore station.
And that he needed not answer any further inquiries from the Chester?
No. I understand he gave them this information, and I understand he gave them some additional names. I asked him also in regard to the inquiry which it was stated that had been sent on behalf of the President of the United States, and he told me that he had received no such inquiry, that if he had received it, he certainly would have answered it, but he had not received any such inquiry.
You are unable to fix the time when he said that he had not received such an inquiry, or when he replied that he had already furnished this information as to those surviving. You are unable to fix that time?
Yes, I was unable to fix the time, but my question covered the whole time, so far as I meant it, in which the Carpathia was operating. That is, the whole time from the rescue of the passengers to her arrival in New York.
You say that the operator on the Carpathia, Mr. Cottam, exercised by your permission...
I beg your pardon, not by my permission.
...the right to sell the story which came to him in his capacity as an operator for his own pecuniary benefit?
I mean, sell a story.
A story. But it may have turned out to be the story.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, but it may have done so.
It may have done so.
It depended on how close-mouthed he was from the time he conceived the idea of selling his story, did it not? And it might have been exclusive?
It was not the intention that it should be exclusive.
It was not your intention?
No, sir.
Was it your intention that the Cottam story or the Bride story should be exclusive?
Certainly not, and I regret it, and I have expressed that already, that they had not said something already, something more explanatory before they reached New York.
You have said that from Sunday night, when you were first apprised of this calamity, you frequently called up your office. That information was lacking. That the public was clamoring for details. That the world was interested in this information. That you were unable to get it satisfactorily. I would like to have you give the committee your best judgment as to whether the customs exercised by Binns in the Republic disaster and the privilege you gave to Cottam on the Titanic disaster has anything to do with your failure to get this information and the failure of the world to be apprised of the details of this horror.
In my opinion, it had not, because these operators were never instructed not to give out news.
Why did they not give it out?
They should be able to answer that question themselves, I should say.
You are the head of the wireless system, a recognized authority, a man who gives it your constant care, and a man of reputation and character for whom the people have the highest respect. And I would like to have your judgment about it.
About what?
You are connected up with this matter through these intercepted radiograms. Your name is mentioned. An injunction seems to have arrived at the Carpathia coming from you and your manager or chief engineer, and I would like the information I have asked for in that question, if you can give it.
I wish respectfully to state that I have already testified that I have no knowledge whatever about any of these messages which were sent or are alleged to have been sent to the operator on the Carpathia.
And you have not talked with Mr. Sammis about it?
I state on oath that I did not talk to him on any single occasion.
At the time since?
At the time or since.
You've seen the rumors on this matter, have you not, in the papers?
Yes.
I have not seen those rumors. But after seeing those rumors, did you talk with Samus about the matter?
I saw Mr. Samus for a few moments some time ago, and I told him, I said, you know that I did not authorize that message.
When did you tell him that?
I told him that since the survivors were landed, I do not remember the exact date.
About what time?
3 or 4 days ago, I should say.
Have you talked with him about it since?
Excuse me. No, sir. I should state an explanation also of this matter.
Please do. I would like to have you in your own way. I'm not seeking to embarrass you at all. I simply feel it my duty to get the information I have asked for.
What I meant and intended when I stated to the operator that he could take something for a story or for an account of the disaster was that the newspapers and reporters would be so interested in what he had to say, and in himself personally, in view of the fact especially that Bride had behaved in such a brave and gallant manner, that without holding any general information, they would be ready to pay him an amount for a story or a description which he could give them.
Have you finished?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Marconi, did you expect the operator to syndicate this information or to give it exclusively to one newspaper?
I did not expect him to give it exclusively.
Did you expect him to put the story up to the highest bidder?
No, sir.
Did you expect him to favor any particular news agency?
I did not.
Did you expect him to sell it to the Associated Press?
No.
Did you expect him to sell it to the other press associations, or any of them, either of them?
I did not.
You expected that he would impart his information to some newspaper.
To some newspaper. I did not care which.
And that newspaper could give him what it chose to give him for an exclusive story containing the details of the Titanic disaster.
No, there was no idea of an exclusive story in my mind.
If I understand you correctly, you did not seek to control the operator at all in what he would say or to whom he would say it.
No, I did not.
Do you know what the use of the words arranged for your exclusive story for dollars in 4 figures, Mr. Marconi agreeing, say nothing until you see me, J.M. Samus, would indicate? What did he mean by 4 figures?
I suppose it was something over $1,000, but if you'll allow me to repeat again...
Oh, please do, please do. I wish you would say anything you want to about it.
For the 4th or 5th or 6th time, I say that I know nothing whatever about those messages.
And you understand that I'm not saying that you do.
Thank you.
I'm simply inquiring, do you know whether Cottam or Bride sold their story?
I think they received remuneration for it, and that may be called sold, I presume. I mean, they were paid for it.
Do you know how much they got?
I do not know how much Cottam got.
Do you know how much Bride got?
I was told that Bride got $500.
From whom?
From the New York Times.
And who told you that?
I think it was Mr. Bottomley.
The general manager of your company?
Yes. I should also say, I believe, one of the editors of the New York Times, either Mr. Ox or Mr. Venander.
Was it expected, or did any officer of your company receive any portion of it within your knowledge?
No, I do not believe anyone did receive any portion of it.
You say you did not believe it. Have you heard that anyone did?
No, I have not. But if I did hear it, I would think it would be an extraordinary thing and absolutely wrong.
Do you know what Cottam got for his story?
I do not.
Do you know who purchased his story?
I think the New York Times got his story.
The same paper?
The same paper, but I'm not absolutely certain of that.
Are you yourself interested in any way in the New York Times?
No.
Is Mr. Bottomley?
I do not think he is.
Do you know whether he is or not?
Well, perhaps I'm wrong, but I have no knowledge in the matter.
You do not know anything about it?
I do not know anything about it.
Is Mr. Samus interested in the New York Times?
I do not know.
Is any officer of the Marconi Company interested in the New York Times?
I do not know. I do not think so, because if anyone was, I probably would hear of it in some way.
Is any director of your company interested in New York Times?
No.
Have you heard from any source, any statement given as to the amount Cottam received for his story?
No, I have not.
Did you see his story?
I saw the headlines of his story. I did not read it through.
In the New York Times?
In the Times.
When?
I suppose the day it was published.
And what day was it published?
I cannot remember that.
The day following the arrival of the Carpathia?
I presume it was that day, but I cannot say definitely.
So they sold the story immediately after they arrived, and it was printed the next morning.
So I understand.
All of which was done with your permission.
I did not give my permission for that.
You did not oppose it.
I knew nothing about it. I only said that he could obtain payment for an article.
That is rather consent, is it not?
It's consent to the fact of obtaining payment, nothing else.
It is consent, notwithstanding it violates the laws of the country in which you live.
It's not a violation of the laws in the country in which I live, with every respect.
I thought giving out information was made a criminal offense in England.
I'm afraid you misunderstood my previous answer. Giving out information of any message that passed through the hands of an operator would be criminal offense.
This man gave it out, did he not?
No, he did not give any information of any message that passed through his hands.
He means messages from other parties.
Suppose the United States Navy had done that. Of course, it is a government department and would be privileged, but suppose an operator on another ship had given out messages that he had intercepted. He would be liable to persecution.
The Titanic was a ship of the White Star Line.
Yes.
And the White Star Line is a British company.
Yes.
The information that Cottam received over the wireless was from the operator of the Titanic. That information was imparted in New York the day following the arrival of the Carpathia for $500, was it not? Wait, we do not want to leave you in any doubt at all, Mr. Marconi. All the information regarding the sinking of the Titanic, at least the official information, was received by the operator of the Carpathia from the operator of the Titanic.
Yes.
That was a part of the detail of this horror, was it not?
It was.
No. Wait, one moment, and then I'll explain. I'll let you explain. But I want to complete my question. That information you consented that your operators should give out.
No, absolutely.
What did the headlines of the New York Times article say?
I do not know. I would have to have my memory refreshed in that matter. There have been so many headlines since the accident.
If the article in the New York Times, given out by Bride or Cottam, detailed the information of the horrors that passed from the Titanic to the Carpathia by wireless, that would have been improper, would it not?
Well, no, not in every case. The operator on the Carpathia was at absolute liberty to disclose any information which he personally received from the operator of the Titanic. The only operator that I saw the night the Carpathia got into dock, as I stated, was Mr. Bride. Mr. Bride had been, as we now know, the second operator on the Titanic, and he also assisted the operator on the Carpathia after he was rescued by that ship. Mr. Bride was not compelled by any law for regulation to withhold anything concerning his experience on either the Titanic or the Carpathia. He could give out his story in the same way that any other of the 800 passengers or crew were able to give out theirs. In regard to Cottam, the operator on the Carpathia, as I have stated, I did not see him that night. I gave him no instructions as to what he had to say or what he should not say. He was perfectly entitled to tell his story. It does not mean that as an operator on a sinking ship, that the only means of making his story interesting is to disclose messages. He was there during part of the, I should say, awful time when the survivors were rescued and brought to New York, and he had, no doubt, a great deal which was of interest to the public. I absolutely deny in the most emphatic manner that I stated or made any suggestion to him to divulge anything which it would be improper or unlawful for him to divulge.
I am very greatly obliged to you for that statement, sweeping and broad and covering the situation. And I would not have you gather the impression that I am seeking to impute any motive that you have is unworthy. Having this telegram signed Samus, and seeing the figures mentioned, I think that I was quite justified in seeking to ascertain what you might know about it. And the story that you yourself were willing he should release was the story of the horrors and the details which followed this calamity, of which he himself or they had personal experience, and over that you have not pretended to exercise any censorship whatever?
I thank you for your remarks at the beginning of your question. I do not care whether it was through the New York Times or any other newspaper, but I was very anxious that the public should have the news of this disaster as quickly and as accurately as possible. I should also state that this message signed by Mr. Samus and mentioning the 4 figures was, I believe from the information before the committee, transmitted when the ship was practically entering New York Harbor. It was not transmitted when the ship was days out, a long way from shore. I do not know whether it would have been possible, with interference going on in New York Harbor, to have sent a story from the ship when the same was approaching the dock. I am not expressing any opinion of the message except to state the fact that I did not authorize it, and I might also say that I do not like it.
You have not approved it?
No.
You are a British subject and do not live in this country?
I am Italian, sir.
Being a foreigner, I want to draw your attention to the statement you have just made, that you are quite willing that the story of the catastrophe should go out to the public.
Yes.
You do not have any notion, do you, that the public all read the New York Times?
I mean, a part of the public.
Exactly. But would it not have been a great deal better if that information had been flashed from the ship to the Marconi office, or if a reply had been given to the Chester which contained all of that story so as to let it reach the world in that way?
I'm in absolute agreement with you. It would have been very much better.
Insofar as the regulations of your company or its custom or habit have gone in the past, this does not look exactly like the right thing to do, does it?
I've already stated that I did not approve of this message, and I agree it would have been better if the operator had used his discretion and sent a description of what occurred at an earlier date.
Now, Mr. Marconi, you say you were in touch with your offices in New York each day and night from the day of the catastrophe until the landing of the Carpathia, seeking information. I would like to know whether you are aware of the fact that the American Marconi Company requested and secured the suppression of the operator of all its stations so as to expedite the receipt of news.
Yes, I'm aware that the American Marconi Company did everything in its power to expedite the receipt of news.
Did they suppress any...
They stopped the operation of any station which might interfere with the reception of news, or communication with any ship or station which would have been directly concerned in this.
They put a silent signal on all their stations?
Yes, except those which were necessary and essential to obtaining of news or information.
What stations were those that came within the exception?
The stations that belong to the United States Wireless Company, the assets of which have been absorbed by the Marconi Company. They were requested not to operate with any ship or not to practice. One or two Marconi stations, I cannot recall which were not essential or which were unnecessary to communicate to the Carpathia, were asked not to transmit. And I think also some arrangement was made with the United States Navy with regard to minimizing any interference that might have occurred between the Marconi stations and the naval stations.
Did the American Marconi Company enjoin a silence on the stations of the United States Navy?
They had no power of enjoining silence on them.
Did they attempt to do so?
They had some friendly communication with the United States Navy in regard to what could best be done.
The Marconi Company requested it.
I have no knowledge of exactly what passed, but I know that my feeling and opinion was that we should request or ask or arrange with the United States Navy to cooperate with us in this manner.
And did they do it?
As far as I'm aware, yes, they did.
So that plans were made and carried out which were calculated to give the American Marconi Company practically exclusive control over the information about this catastrophe.
Well, it was bound to have it in this way, that the operator of the Carpathia was a Marconi operator, as was the operator of the Titanic, and therefore he had to respond or communicate with the organization with which he was in touch and with which he was accustomed to work.
Did you yourself send any communication to your English office or offices or stations about that matter?
Not until long after the survivors had landed.
Did you enjoin silence upon your English stations?
I did not, nor would I have the power in doing so.
That is under the control of the government.
It is under control of the government, and it is under control of my co-directors in England.
And you made no attempt to do so?
I made no attempt, and it would be contrary to what I wished.
Mr. Marconi, you are a life senator of Italy, are you not?
I am not. I heard a rumor of the desire of electing me, but I am not eligible until I'm 40 years of age.
Regarding this arrangement with Mr. Bride, you simply expressed a willingness that he should make some money out of a narration of his experiences?
Yes, sir. My feeling, expressed quite frankly, is that these operators are paid a very small amount. That certainly we would have compensated them to some degree, but if it were possible for them to make some money out of the story that they had, I do not say that they had exclusive information, but through permitting themselves to be interviewed, I was very glad that they should make this small amount. That was my sole feeling in the matter.
You say that this Marconigram sent by Mr. Sammis was sent about the time the Carpathia was entering New York Harbor?
So I understand.
So that would not have interfered at all with any action on the part of the operator in giving full information prior to that time?
No, it would not have.
And it was not to be expected whilst they were entering New York Harbor that the operator would be able to give much information, however willing he might have been to do so.
Certainly. I might also state that if the captain had seen fit to send a report of what he knew, he could have done it at any time, and no instructions, rightly or wrongly given, could have held the operator.
I presume it would have been very difficult to send by wireless a long and minute account of this entire disaster, would it not, from the Carpathia while at sea?
It would have been very difficult to send a long account. Some short account might have been sent, but you must remember these operators who have been before this committee are men of not very much experience in general matters, but rely very much on the captain instructing them.
You had in view simply his receiving compensation after his arrival for any story he might be able to give to a newspaper.
Yes, but I had no intention that the information should be withheld in any way.
Mr. Marconi, is there any wireless company operating in England other than the Marconi?
I should say practically no. There are one or possibly two companies that have 2 or 3 ships, I think, but the bulk of the ships, or the great majority of the British ships, are fitted by the Marconi Company. I should say hundreds are fitted by the Marconi Company, and a few, 6, 7, 8, 10 by the others.
Are there laws regulating radio communication?
Yes, there is the English Wireless Telegraph Act, and also England is a member of the Berlin Convention, which is in force.
Do you remember the date of the Wireless Telegraph Act?
I think it was 1904 or 1905, something like that.
Are there any other companies in Germany or Canada?
In Canada, there's a Marconi Company. In Germany, there's a company the interests of which are held by the Marconi Company of England, and partly by a German concern. I think there are some Belgians interested in it too.
By whom were the operators of the Titanic and Olympic and Carpathia employed?
They were employed by the English company.
The wireless company?
Yes, the Marconi International Marine Co.
Not by the ships themselves?
In the case of the Titanic and the Carpathia, I think they were employed by the Marconi Company. On some ships, they are employed directly by the ship owners.
But in the instance here, Bride, Phillips, and Cottam were employed by the Marconi Company, were they?
Yes, sir.
They were under direction and control of the Marconi Company?
Yes, except so far as it does not affect the supreme authority of the captain.
The captain who can give orders about sending messages, when to send it, and what to send?
Yes. There is a special clause in our agreements with them that shall be fixed so that in case of emergency or danger, the captain is the absolute chief and head and ruler of everything concerning the wireless, and all commercial rules which hold in ordinary times are suspended at the direction of the captain.
Of course, the captain cannot know whether his orders are being obeyed or not. He himself is not able to conduct the actual operation of an instrument in any way.
No.
He has to depend on the operator.
He generally orders that messages have got to be censored by him or one of his officers. On most ships, no message of any kind can leave the ship unless it's approved by the captain or the officer he has delegated.
But the captain himself would not know actually whether the message had been sent. He must rely on the statement of the operator as to that.
You refer to his own messages?
Yeah, unless he's an expert himself.
No, sir. If the captain sends a message, he always asks the operator afterwards if he has any doubt whether it's been sent, and whether it has been acknowledged. I myself have seen that done on ships very often. He usually gets that information very easily. They have a telephone, as a rule, between the bridge and the wireless operator.
But the captain on board the ship will not know himself whether the message which he has directed sent has actually ever been sent, will he?
No, I should say he would know it, because if the captain gave a message that was not sent or was not acknowledged, it would be the duty of the operator to inform the captain of that fact.
Yes, but suppose the operator violated his duty.
Then he would not know it, but I do not think that occurs very often.
Then these operators on these ships, which we have mentioned here, were employed by the Marconi Company, were paid by the Marconi Company, were engaged by the Marconi Company, furnished by the Marconi Company, and certified by the Marconi Company to the ships they were on.
I should add to that they were certified by the British government, because they must be licensed by the government in order to be permitted to operate. And they were accepted by the ship company because the ship company has the right to accept an operator or refuse him if they have any good reason for doing so.
Do you know what the law requires as to experience of these operators and their training?
The law requires that they shall have knowledge of the apparatus, that they shall be able to repair faults in it, and that they shall be able to transmit and receive with a certain speed and accuracy, and that they shall be cognizant of the rules and regulations of the British Wireless Telegraph Act, and with the enactments of the Berlin Convention regulating wireless telegraphy.
Do you know what experience these men had, Cottam, Bride, and Phillips?
I think their experience was sufficient to enable them to carry out their work. The government examination is pretty strict in the matter, and I think my company's examination, too, is very strict.
I was asking as to your personal knowledge. I understood you to say you knew personally several of these operators and had known them for some time.
I had not known these particular operators.
Oh, you had not?
Only since the accident.
Oh. Is there any danger of interference in radio communication and difficulty in that respect where messages are being sent back and forth and messages in other directions between other ships or between ships and the shore are being sent at the same time? Is not confusion likely to follow by such interference as that?
The confusion is likely to follow unless the arrangement of the stations and the ship stations is properly regulated. That is controlled by the rule which govern the wavelength to be used and which generally compel the operators to discipline in the working of the apparatus. The result is that in England or other European countries, ships use two wavelengths, one for communication with shore stations. The shore stations use other wavelengths which do not interfere with the ships communicating with each other. The Royal Navy, the Navy of England, uses wavelengths different from the commercial Navy in order that there shall be no interference with or by them. Other wavelengths are used by the Army, and still different wavelengths are used by them in communicating between England and foreign countries, like between England and Canada. The government represented by the Post Office decides, after consulting the parties interested, what wavelengths shall be apportioned to each particular service. I myself, apart from my company, have an experimental station in England, and I am given a certain wavelength to work on, which does not interfere with the Navy station at Portsmouth. If I want to change it after consultation with them, they let me change it if I am reasonable in the matter. Everything is regulated in such a way as to cause a minimum of interference, and I think so far this regulation has been highly successful.
And the regulation that you advise would have reference to that wavelength?
Yes, the wavelength, and what we call the damping of the wave, whether it's a wave likely to interfere or not. These are what we call exclusive waves and troublesome, meddlesome waves.
Now, in order to accomplish results in that direction, how would you reach all interests and all parties that might be concerned? For instance, the law of one country is one way, and the laws of another country are another way, and shipping is going on between those two countries.
The Berlin Convention has already arranged that with all countries, and I suppose you are aware of it, but it's going to meet again in June in England. And no doubt anything else that any country wants to bring forward to discuss at that meeting will be considered then.
Now, we will pass from that. Your suggestion was that as the ship approached the harbor of New York, it would probably have been impossible to get wireless news from the ship on account of the interference. And how would you avoid that?
I would avoid that by legislation and regulation. I would make it necessary for wireless stations to be licensed by the government. I do not presume to advise the government in this matter, but I'm just expressing my opinion.
Oh, yes, that is what I'm asking for.
I would apportion wavelengths to various parties in such a manner that interference would not be created. If, however, too many people asked for license in a given area or district so that wavelengths could not be found to accommodate them all, the authorities in that case would have to refuse any more licenses. My advice would be that they should exercise their powers of discretion and try to do their best and not stop experimentation, which might handicap the progress of the art. In England, if some experimental scientist or someone else wants to put up a station in place where he will interfere with the Navy, he's told he cannot do it, but he is offered another part of the country where he can carry on his work without interfering with anyone. I should say, now in England, it is a punishable offense to put up a station without a license. It's something like having a still without a license of the government in some other countries. It's considered wrong. If you will allow me to also state, everyone who has a license, experimental or otherwise, to operate wireless telegraphy is enjoined to secrecy and must not divulge the contents of any message he may happen to receive. If he should do so, his license is suspended, and he is liable to other penalties.
Passing from that to the subject of these communications, would you feel, Mr. Marconi, that your company or an operator employed by your company would have the legal right, I'm speaking of now, irrespective of the moral right, to withhold information from the public in order to sell it as news?
You're speaking of the legal right?
Yes.
As to an operator, I should say no. He would have no legal right to withhold it, but at the same time, there's nothing to compel him to send it. If he was ordered by the captain, or if somebody sent a message through him, or tendered a message for transmission to shore, he would be obliged to send it, but there's nothing, I think, which legally compels him to make up a story on the ship and send it ashore.
How about his answering inquiries?
Well, of course, the inquiries ought to be properly addressed to the captain. The wireless operator is only a subordinate official, whose business it is to operate the wireless. He's not usually a man who can give very accurate information concerning the matters relating to a ship.
Do you mean, for instance, if the operator on this Titanic had received a message inquiring after the condition of the ship, that it would have been his business to communicate that to the commander and then answer according to the direction of the commander?
That is what he should have done.
He himself should not have replied?
No, he himself should not have replied. Quite true. That would be against the rules.
You can concede, I presume, that if an operator is allowed to sell as news information, such as these operators had, he would be tempted to withhold information and refrain from answering inquiries in order to increase the value of his story, would he not?
He might be, but I never looked at it that way before.
You say that Binns made some use of the information he had of the Republic disaster and sold it for his own benefit.
No, I do not exactly say that. I say that he received payment for something he said, for some story which he gave in regard to the Republic disaster.
You referred to the commendable course taken by Bride, the surviving operator of the Titanic, which merited the highest praise, evidently, in your mind.
Yes.
Do you not think it would be wise to encourage among your operators all over the world the same loyalty and courage and daring and discipline that was shown by Bride?
Yes, and I think everything that is possible to do in that direction is being done.
Do you remember that Mr. Bride said that about 2 minutes before the Titanic sank, I asked him if he left the sinking ship, and his reply was, "No, sir." And I said to him, "Why did you not leave?" And he said, "Because the captain had not given me permission." That was a pretty high order of discipline, was it not?
Absolutely the highest.
For such a service as that, do you not think it might be very appropriately left to the generosity and appreciation of the people of the world to reward him instead of encouraging him to get additional compensation by retelling his experiences to a single newspaper for $500?
I think it might be left to them. I just want to follow up what I said by saying that in the case of Binns, he was compensated in a special way by the company which employed him.
By your company?
By my company, and no doubt something of the same kind will be done for Bride and Cottam.
Before you leave the stand, would you care to indicate whether in the future management of the Marconi Company you would not discourage the course that was taken by these two men with regard to the sale of their stories of which they were in possession?
I certainly would, but I should add that I would like that there should be no misunderstanding of this matter. I had no intention of authorizing any exclusive story, and I was against the withholding of any news.
I understood you to say that, Mr. Marconi. You are not under subpoena?
No, sir.
You've come voluntarily.
I have come voluntarily, and as long as I could possibly be in the United States, I will be at the disposal of the committee for any information which they may require.
You expected to leave for Europe yesterday or today?
I expected to leave Tuesday.
And you voluntarily refrained from going until you could communicate with me?
Yes, sir, because I thought there might be something which you might require to see me about.
And you came here of your own accord and were willing to remain?
I am willing to remain for a certain time. My engagements in England are very pressing. Therefore, I would ask you to let me go as soon as possible.
Can I ask you to have Mr. Sammis and Mr. Bottomley come?
Yes.
Will you undertake to do that?
I will undertake to do that. I would like to know when.
Just as soon as they can get ready.
Yes, sir.
That is all. I want to thank you for your kindness.
Will you allow me to say one thing that you did not ask me?
Yes.
In our organization, a copy is kept of every message received and sent on board a ship. Therefore, this register of messages may be of some use to the committee.
Oh. Kindly get the time when each message was sent and the messages that passed between the Carpathia, if you please, and Mr. Bottomley and yourself during those days between the accident and the arrival of the Carpathia, if we may have them.
Well, unfortunately, the messages on the Carpathia were taken to the Mediterranean by the Carpathia. The captain would not land them. We endeavored to get them, but the captain would not give them out.
Would it be possible for you to wire the operator of the Carpathia and ask him to wire back copies of those messages?
I could ask him to do so. Of course, they will be in the hands of the British government very soon, these messages.
Try, will you, and see if you can get them?
I will try.
I am greatly obliged to you for your kindness in coming. Let the officer bring in Mr. Cottam, the operator of the Carpathia. My. That was something. Two things real quick. Marconi is quite the mover and shaker. That he's, I'm not a life senator of Italy just because I'm not old enough, but I will be.
Oh, I'm sure he will be. I'd love to. He's got an experimental station. And
what a little life he's living.
Tinkering about. And
just doing what I do. What a life.
I love this guy, Marconi. I just
really
picture him tinkering around, and I know not every one of our viewers will have the same mental image, but I picture him like my younger brother Mark. Maybe it's because his name's Marconi, but just tinkering about and just
great things happening. And the other thing is, I'm sorry, Senator Smith, what an a-hole. With his little, I have not disclosed my whole purpose, and I'm not going to.
Oh, I don't wish to embarrass you.
Yeah, but I'm just trying hard.
Did you fart?
Exactly.
I'm just saying it stinks in here.
Okay, so those are the two things that I needed to get out so that I can focus on anything else. Okay, thank you. Whew. And breaking the law, he's kind of right with the telegram business. You're not allowed to share, so he's kind of right on that.
What really struck me, I mean, the press has been wild since forever.
Yes.
That they're already hounding, and, I understand that, the world wants to know, but I can't believe, I really think of a lot of shystiness as a more modern thing.
Yeah,
I forget that it's...
I'm saddened to see that this is not new.
But I stand by Marconi. That is not his phraseology, and that is not...
No, it's not.
No, I stand by... and I also, even though I get it, and that perhaps a person would want to hold out for more for exclusivity or something like that, but I also stand by Marconi in letting them... Mm-hmm. It happened to you. You might as well. And also, you don't get paid when the ship's sinking anyway, so you might as well make some money. But I agree with him. It happened to you.
And I love that they're going to compensate them,
Yeah.
And, don't you think the public should reward them?
Yeah. Oh,
well, yes, they should.
Okay, so we were doing GoFundMes back in 1912 already.
Very
the public
sad,
can admire
sad.
him, but it's not on the public to fund him.
No, and
he doesn't get paid after it sinks,
And the whole, it's against the law to share anything you've gotten, but is it? Because
then it's on record.
What are they going to do?
We keep a record of it.
Once it's out there, it's out there. Like Prince Charles. Those weren't supposed. Those messages between him and Camilla were not supposed to be picked up, but they were, and they were shared, and then you can't pull it back.
Yeah.
So.
But I understand that that's it's like when you are an interpreter, too.
It's a gray
You're not
area.
allowed to inject your own emotions and you can't run and go tell somebody what you just interpreted or something.
Right. True.
But people do it anyways.
So he can't start it with, well, I heard this telegram. I was just getting ready for bed.
Yeah.
And I heard this. I'm not going to tell you what it said.
For the captain's eyes only.
Immediately we started heading that way.
Yeah.
So, okay. And wow, so organized with with everybody's got their own wavelength.
Yeah.
That blew my mind.
And I thought
had no idea.
Also good, how perspicacious to stop some stations from transmitting during this.
Oh, yes.
Let's not send, don't be chit-chatting out there.
Yes, that was cool. Rally round. Mm-hmm. I was very impressed with that, too.
I was disappointed in Senator Smith for calling him a foreigner.
Yeah.
Okay, he's from, but America is not the only country, people.
But if he was British... Yeah. Would he be called a foreigner then?
Yeah.
Because
it
didn't
also,
sound like he would be.
Talking to one of, probably the most intelligent man
Such
in this
brilliant
whole
mind.
situation, and he just, as a foreigner, don't you think? Blah, blah, blah. But I like their little portion in there where it was they're in couples therapy. And I do appreciate the beginning part of your last question.
Thank you for saying something not hurtful every single time.
In part of your question, thank you.
So I was confused about Marconi was saying that they have telephones between the bridge and the operators of the wireless, but Bride was running back and forth to the captain and like there wasn't any phone calling about, like, did you call for help, what did they say, the Carpathia says they're coming. He didn't just call him and tell him that. He had to run back and forth.
Forgot about that.
Because I thought, why didn't
Maybe
they have a phone
quicker?
there? If you have a phone from the
crow's nest,
why wouldn't you have one there?
But I feel like they've mentioned the phone before, but I did forget about Bride running back and forth.
So that confused me, but still, maybe they're supposed to, like, binoculars.
Yeah. Or maybe it's quicker if he's just right there. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I did like how Marconi referred to it when he said about that they allow people to have experimental stations and that's important and you don't want to hinder the progress of the art.
Yeah,
I really like how he...
I'm impressed with the way his mind works. And when he's when at the near the end when he says, we have every message has been, and that might be helpful, and Senator Smith is like, well, then I want to hear the messages that were sent between you guys about this keeping your mouth shut stuff.
Yeah.
All the
what
information.
About all the other, yeah.
We're just going to zip past that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he wants it all, but yeah, he's like a dog with a bone. He really gets on something and then just won't let it go. And again, of course, the president.
Yeah.
Did you get that message?
Focus.
From the president?
Oh, let that one go, yeah.
And then just a point of note, I looked up how much $500 is equivalent to in 2024, and the purchasing power equivalency is $16,194. So yeah, you sell that story.
I'm selling it.
You sell that story, Brian. You sell it.
Yeah. Well, good job, Marconi, telling them to get in on that. Don't just give it away, because they were going to tell it anyway.
Yeah. Well, and they're going to be summoned, and
Wow. Yeah. That's what? How much?
$16,000.
500 is $16,000.
Yeah.
Holy macaroni. That's
holy Marconi.
And what up, Captain? Gotta say that the Carpathia's captain won't release the messages.
Oh, yeah.
Because he is the captain, so he gets the final say.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. It puts a little more intrigue in it.
But Marconi tried, he said, we endeavored to get them. So he tried to get them, and he's like,
wouldn't give them to us. And then pretty soon they're going to be in the hands of the government.
Well, the British government, yes.
So then what?
I know. What are we hiding?
The captain want to...
That's suspicious. Did you want to read them? Are you going to sell them? Are you going to sell them?
Oh, maybe. Get that 16,000, fam. Yeah, I thought that too. I thought that was really weird because he also just said, oh, we have them all. And then the senator's like, okay, we'll take them. Well.
We don't have those, per se. And I just have one last thing. Okay, so do you have anything before I get to that?
No, I was going to say, again, how shameful it is, though, about leaving the people to reward
Oh, yes.
But, yeah, no, you go. Yeah. I'm done.
Everybody's being sent to the same room at the Strand Hotel. What is up with that? It's like, we keep everybody, meet me at the Strand Hotel, 502, this room.
Why doesn't somebody just go?
Why are they, like, it's just like, what, how many people are at
there?
The Strand Hotel? This is like going to be a Agatha Christie dinner party.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Meet me at the Strand Hotel at 2 o'clock.
The iceberg is in this room.
The fish is in the net. So, yeah, that just, I'm like, doo-doo-doo.
Yeah. I wonder if we ever find out more about that.
Only time will tell.
That's true. All right. Bye. Just a note from the readers, we want to thank you guys for listening, and we really value your feedback, so please let us know what you're thinking, either in the comments or at titanictranscripts@gmail.com.